Hi, everyone. I'm Kudzi, and this is my sister Kim, and we're the Empowered Sisters. And today we have a very interesting topic, and I'm going to let Kim introduce our topic today.
So today we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic, specifically race and gender inequality. And we'll like to focus on the unique challenges of Black women in society and the workplace. And this topic is really important, I feel, because it's not something that's often talked about when we're talking about social justice measures. Usually we talk about each thing separately, and we never really stop to think, what is the impact when we have different social categorizations overlapping with each other. And this can be race, gender, sexual orientation, nationality, and the list can go on and on and on. So all of these things can then overlap in a system where there is discrimination. And you'll find that if you're a Black woman like we are, then a lot of these things compound on each other. It's not just that you're facing sexism and racism together, and they're not separate because they come together to present like a very unique challenge to your life. So that's essentially what we want to talk around today, talk about ways in which it hasn't been addressed in the past and how we can start thinking about it if you're in a situation like that and recognize it for what it is, and then start to hopefully tackle it from there.
Yeah. And I think this topic is something that definitely should be spoken of. And for me, as a Black woman in a predominantly white workforce, some of the challenges that I faced is trying to even raise that I have unique challenges. Like, when women are speaking together, or when women are, have certain things where they are at a disadvantage, for example, maybe leadership positions, they'll be all in agreement. Like, it's like a minority group, like let's say women or a group that has been disadvantaged, coming together, talking about, yes, women are disadvantaged. And then you as a Black woman, when you try and raise the point that I have, even more challenges, sometimes I've experienced, it feels like you're trying to draw attention to yourself, or you're trying to say like you're special more than everyone else. So I find it very hard sometimes to say, where people are already like, airing their grievances, and it's quite a sensitive time for you to then come up and say, well, I have unique challenges. It almost seems like you are like not considering the other voices, like trying to find that balance to say, yes, I understand your challenges, but my challenges are even more unique. And like the analogy that I always use in the workplace as a Black woman is, I feel like if you're a woman in a workplace, let's say, for example, men and women have a microphone. I feel like if you're a woman, your microphone has decreased volume, and if you're a Black woman, the volume decreases even further. So that microphone symbolizes your voice in the workplace. So I feel like if you're a woman, your voice is not like equal to a man's voice. And if you're a Black woman, like you even have to speak louder. Like if you have a point to make, you have to like really reinforce it, or and I don't mean speaking louder as in volume, as in trying to convince people. I feel like because women are seen as less competent than men, and Black women are seen as less competent than white women, so even that is a challenge when you're trying to even like trying to bring your point across with your colleagues, and they might not understand, that they have some unconscious bias as well, even though they are women and they're disadvantaged, in a certain area. But then they can still have, people who are, they can still be biased to a certain group as well. So I find it's very, very like interesting to try and navigate, and even harder to try and explain sometimes to other people who think that, oh, we're all women, so we're all facing the same problems. Yeah.
Exactly. And if we're talking the workplace, I think another like painful area where it impacts you is even like pay.
Mm.
So the pay gap has been a big thing in the media recently. Everyone wants to talk about how there's a gap. And often it's usually just like men versus women or like Black people versus white people, but
Mm.
rarely really breaks it down to the different categories. And one study actually found that white men are paid the most, followed by white women, followed by Black men, and then at the very bottom, there's Black women.
Yes,
So
yeah.
there's sort of this idea that if we can close the gap between men and women, then we fix things. Or if we close the gap between Black people and white people, then we fix things. But then it's apparent that Black women are sort of experiencing a double whammy of
Mm.
discrimination.
Yeah.
And this pushes us to like the very bottom of all these issues. And people hardly ever make that distinction that, yes, there is this problem and there's a population that has a unique problem within it because they're actually impacted even worse by all of these things because they're facing both ends of the discrimination.
Yeah.
So it's all of these things that we experience in the workplace, we experience in society, and it becomes very hard, like you said, to speak up
Mm.
because it's like we're fighting one thing at a time. I've seen the
Yeah.
world sort of
Yeah.
likes to look at it that way. Like
Yes.
now we're talking about race. Let's just talk about race, right? And we're
Mm.
going to rally around that. We're going to have people making bold statements, bold gestures around that. And then if we're talking about sexism, it's a feminist movement, right? So we're going to be
Mm.
talking about feminism. We're focusing on women, women's rights. You hardly ever hear someone saying, we're talking about Black women specifically because we recognize that they face both racism and sexism compounded at the same time. And
Yeah.
it's not purely additive, I think. I don't think it's a situation where you have 1 + 1 = 2. I think it's more of a multiplication thing. So you literally have a multiplier effect of the discrimination you're experiencing, so that in the end, you're so much more disadvantaged than
Mm.
your male peers who are also Black or than your female peers who are also white.
Yeah. And you know, the other interesting thing that I found, especially in the workplace, is that, you know, as Black women in our fight for equality, we lose the Black man voice because the Black men join us when we're talking about racism because it applies to them. And then when we're talking about the unique challenges of Black women, the Black male voices are silent because they don't know about that experience. So we're already a minority group. Now imagine that minority group shrunk even further to be, you know, just women. Like, so it's kind of even harder to bring your, you know, your issues to the table because you don't even have the support of people of your own race because they don't even know what your unique experience has been. So I find it really a lonely struggle for the Black women in the workplace, where, like, for example, where I've worked, like I have been, maybe there's only one other Black woman in a workplace of, you know, hundreds and hundreds of people. So I think we already stand out. And I feel like there's so many stereotypes which are put on Black women specifically that are not even put on Black men. Like, you know, it's kind of like, I find in the workplace, people, if they're talking about domestic violence, it's like people kind of look at you, they assume that Black women are in abusive relationships, or, you know, Black women are abused in their homes for some reason because they know that, you know, the cultural perspectives, they bring that in as well, how Black women are more subservient to their, you know, to their husbands and more submissive than the white women. So you know, there are things that there's these certain stereotypes that are just put upon you, and there's this, the angry Black woman. So, you know, you've got a small voice. When you do try to raise your point, sometimes you do, like, you know, need to be more assertive. And then when you are being assertive, you are viewed as being angry. And it's like, oh, of course, the angry Black woman. So it's like wherever you're going, like, you know, you're hitting that dead end. And, you know, it does get really frustrating and it does get really lonely to bring the issues of the Black woman to the forefront. That, you know, first of all, we want our voice to be heard. We want our ideas to be, you know, to be taken on board we want to have equal say in the things that are going on in the workplace. But I feel like, as Black women, sometimes we take a back seat because it means that, we don't meet that stereotype of being an angry Black woman and, we just sit, but then we meet the stereotype of being submissive. So either way, it's kind of like a catch-22 situation. Yeah.
And conversely, actually, when you're talking about the angry Black women, I thought about how Black women are so often portrayed as strong.
Mm,
And I think that strength is a way of recognizing that they actually experience some of the worst discrimination
yeah.
within society as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
but they somehow manage to make it. And instead of having empathy to say, like, wow, we really should be making it easier for them to succeed, or we should be recognizing that there's roadblocks for them and what can we do, to get rid of these things. So that's what you would hope people would then think of. But instead, it's just like, wow, you're so strong. How do you do it? 2 years have really seen people like rising up to come together. Let's
Mm,
talk about racism. Let's talk about Black Lives Matter. Let's talk
mm,
about sexism with the Me Too movement. Let's
yeah.
address abuse of women.
Yeah.
So people have been very vocal in the past few years around all things social justice. But I think that oftentimes, like you're saying, Black women don't quite find their space within these movements.
Mm,
And I think oftentimes the reflex is to just keep quiet because it's not really the time. We're like supporting the movement, and it's not really the time to bring up that we have unique challenges. So
mm,
let's take a step back. But I want to challenge that and say that we can raise our voices without actually betraying the movement about racial justice.
mm,
So I think it's important for us to recognize that if we don't say it, no one else will say it for us. No
mm,
one knows our unique challenges better than we do, and no one recognizes it more than we do. And if we don't speak up and if we don't make our voices heard, everyone will assume that we fit into these same brackets that white women do or the same brackets that Black men do, and we'll never actually bring up that we're facing these unique challenges. So anytime there is a conversation, I think it is important to have that courage to step up and be like, I hear everything you're saying, I support it and I empathize with it. But I also recognize that I don't quite identify with it. So I just want to implore everyone to really think about it every time they're having these kind of conversations, and
mhm,
not to feel bad for not identifying, but rather to see it as an opportunity to raise awareness to a unique struggle that
mm.
people haven't really been acknowledging for ever, really.
Exactly. And just to add on to that, my encouragement will also be to speak up despite the numbers, because sometimes because there have been like the Black Lives Matter movement, like it's got a lot of numbers. Like even the feminist movement has a lot of numbers. The Black female movement might not have a lot of numbers, but the key thing is just get the message across. Just talk about what's unique for you, and it doesn't have to be hundreds of people marching. Like even if it's just you as a single voice, pulling a manager to the side to say, you know what, I know, there's this thing that is specifically catering for women, but me as a Black woman, like I need like even more than this because my challenges are unique. Even just telling one person or to tell a small group of people about your challenges is still bringing the message out there, because sometimes people will put that blanket approach to say, okay, we've addressed the issue of racism, and rightly so, they'll feel very proud of themselves, and to then hear that, oh, okay, there's another issue, sometimes they might feel like, oh my goodness, here we go again. But that's because the voice has been absent from the beginning of the movement, so they don't know they're dealing with two different things. So I think no matter how small the group, no matter in what small way it's coming across, just make sure that if you feel like you have a unique challenge as a Black woman, make sure that it's heard by someone at least, and you just don't keep quiet about it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think for me, in closing, I'll just say that we have focused on Black women predominantly. This is our experience, the two of us. This is what we know intimately and vividly. But I do recognize that there are other social categorizations that can further bring someone down. And this could be things like class, sexual orientation, nationality, etc. All of these things also do
Yeah.
come into the picture. Yeah, so if you're experiencing this and more, like, don't ignore that as well. Make that be known in those spaces as well, so that people know that there are people with several different challenges and we should be trying to cater for everyone and not just for the majority.
Absolutely. And just as a closing statement, I'll say, when you are talking about your unique challenges, make sure you speak on what you need, because it's not enough just to say, look, I like, I need more, or my challenges are unique. If you like, be very specific about what you need, because people have not experienced what you've experienced. So don't expect them to know. If it is the fact that, okay, when it's, in a meeting and maybe you find that I haven't said something, maybe just check in with me, because maybe I'm feeling like my voice doesn't matter, or it's going to be too hard to speak up. Like, you can encourage me. It's not that I'm not interested, but maybe I just need a little nudge for me to participate, or, I need more of this. I need to be accommodated in this way, maybe socially. I need these kind of considerations. So depending on who you are and what you need, make sure that it has been clearly articulated, and know that there are different ways of communication. So sometimes if you feel like you cannot, you don't want to just pull someone aside and tell them, feel free to write it in an email. Like, there's so many ways to communicate. You can write it down. You can tell it to someone who you trust, or so that they can, maybe better articulate it for you, to say, you know what, this person is facing this struggle because of their unique situation. But make sure that whatever way is comfortable for you to communicate, you do make that message clear of what you need. So thank you, everyone. Hope, you share your thoughts, share your comments on what your experiences are, or even if you have different challenges to the ones that we've spoken about. Would love to know about those too. And we'll see you in our next video.
Bye, everyone.